Welcome to your destination.
The current time is
Many time! Let's go! League of Legends! Thank you, Dracos. I'm and Medic Chamberlain. This is Andrew Vedius Day, and we're ready for some action.
Yes, we've got some fantastic League of Legends coming up for you today. We're going to be jumping straight into the draft between Schalke and the Unicorns of Love. A bit of a pivotal matchup for both these teams, given that the Unicorns of Love, this is the second half of the split, and right now they sit towards the bottom. They want to be contesting for that playoff spot, but right now they are slightly out of reach of making it.
In a better spot than they were last split, though.
Very
so
true.
if they can continue some of the form we've seen of them in recent weeks, maybe they can make it back to playoffs once again. Schalke, on the other hand, looking strong after their win yesterday, was a little bit slippery against HBK, but they took the win in the end. They're at 5-4, so a positive win-loss coming into the second half of the split.
Well, let's see what they look to try and focus up against the Unicorns of Love. Heimerdinger are going to be taken away from Neon for the time being. They are on blue side, kind of the preferred side right now in the current meta, because you're not forced to ban away things like the Aatrox, the Nocturne, and the Talia. They could look to take away some of Cold's comfort champions as well, like the Kindred. Alternatively, they could look to target Exile, both Yasuo and Zoe. Big prevalent picks that he has found a lot of success on so far in the regular season.
Oh, they will get rid of the Yasuo to kick us off. If I'm Unicorns of Love, if I'm Exile specifically, probably having flashbacks of Aurelia and thinking we need to ban her. I don't want to have to play against that again. But it is going to be the Nocturne ban. Once again, your favorite champion removed from the Rift.
Very unfortunate, but no real surprises. Schalke, I feel like that they could look to first pick the Zoe themselves if they wanted, and just deny that pick away from the Unicorns. It depends on what their priority is for the squad. We have seen a decent amount of Camille come out for Amazing. Not necessarily something you need to prioritize very early on in the draft, but it is still pretty strong in the current metagame and is something that Amazing has definitely shown a lot of prowess on.
Well, Schalke are going to remove the Rakan as their final ban. Does leave that Zoe open, but Schalke have the first pick if they want to get it for themselves. Expect a Talia or even a Trundle ban here from the Unicorns, and Talia is the immediate first pick from Schalke.
Looks like the Unicorns of Love are happy to give this one away. They will still be able to get themselves the Kindred, so if they go for the Zoe and Kindred, they'd give themselves a strong 2 versus 2. Unicorns also give themselves a bit of a comfort setup as well. We've seen that Cold, this is something that he was playing before a lot of the Kindred buffs even came into the meta, and he's definitely familiar with the strengths and weaknesses of this champion. So kind of comfort draft for the Unicorns with Schalke. They're just going for some of the big priority champions that we're seeing in the current meta right now.
Amazing hasn't actually played Talia yet, nor has Nukeduck, so it's going to be a little bit of a foray into something new for Schalke, but it's a very strong pick. They're going to lock in the Alistair and then the Braum here as well.
Looks like that we are going to go for that funnel strat for Nukeduck. Depending on who prefers what, we could be seeing a Braum in the jungle, or we will be seeing that Braum down bot, perhaps paired up with something like the Lucian, so that Schalke have a bit of AD damage to facilitate. We are still on patch 8.13, which means that the changes to gold funneling haven't quite been implemented on pro play as of yet, but Unicorn's going to answer with a Pike. So if they see Schalke going for funnel, they want to be proactive. They want something that can look to make plays, and something that Totoro is more than happy to make plays on is the Pike.
And his ability to combine with Cold has been a key part of Unicorn's win strategy a lot of the time. Cold, Exile, and Totoro working together to get those invades off, to get the early skirmishes off, and something we've talked about as a way to counteract funnel compositions is to get into their jungle and actually start contesting some of those camps.
That's certainly true, and you've also got to remember that you don't often have a jungler when you're playing this funnel comp. Now, Talia is a little bit of an exception because of the amount of mobility that she does have on her passive. It enables her to roam around the map much more effectively and perhaps get involved in these laners a little bit easier than some of the other funnel comps. And it's just something you have to be respectful of, but for the most part, you can keep track of where they're farming, where they're at the map. You don't have to be afraid of that jungler popping out of nowhere and swinging a lane back in your favor. So this will give a little bit more comfort for Neon and Totoro to look for those 2v2 plays and potentially find a couple kills down in the bottom lane.
So if you are going to go for that 2v2 in the bottom lane, you've got something like Pike already, an aggressive laner, roamer as well. Teaming it up with something like Swain seems like the perfect matchup for me.
Yeah, I feel like that it works very nicely in the composition that they've got. It also gives you a little bit more teamfight and scaling later into the game as well. There's the Lucian that we were talking very much about, the extra bit of AD damage. Now you kind of expect a tanky frontliner engage from the side of Schalke. Something like a Poppy or an Ornn coming out from Vizicachi is kind of the go-to for the Schalke squad. And in it acts just as an extra bit of frontline alongside the Braum and the Alistar.
Chachi has a 100% win rate on the Poppy this split as well. Will be his 3rd game on it, and we saw how impactful that Keeper's Verdict ultimate can be yesterday. If he can do something like that again today, I'm sure Schalke will be very thankful. But final pick here is the Darius into the Poppy in the top lane.
So the Unicorns of Love have a pretty strong early to mid-game spike. They have a lot of winning lanes really across the board. Swain, Pyke, we know how strong it can be in the 2 versus 2. You've got to respect the Lucian and the Braum as well, but you look at Kindred Zoe, also very strong 2v2. Darius is going to have a winning lane matchup into the Poppy, given that he typically does very well into these tanks, and so you have a lot of winning lanes for Cold to play around, and the onus is going to be on Cold to move into these lanes and get these early kills, utilize the pressure that they do have all across the board to try and shut down this funnel that Schalke is looking to set up. Contrastly, Schalke, they're looking to kind of stall out for the time being. They want Talia to get to those 3 items, and if they can, they want to be as proactive as G2 has been with their funnel comps. Look to get into these lanes, see if there's a couple of ganking opportunities, group up with other members, in particular the Braum, to kind of give that early skirmishing an extra bit of power, and whether or not they can pull that off will determine the success of this funnel.
Last time we saw them run a full funnel, Schalke played the Kai'Sa in the mid lane. It took them a little bit of time to actually make plays. Kai'Sa sitting at 3 items for quite a while in that game. Like to see them be a little bit more, put their foot down a little bit more on the accelerator this game, as you say. Try to make those plays. That's what we'll keep our eyes on for them. On the other side, it's all about Cold. Has to make those early plays, has to play towards his winning lanes. And if he can do that alongside Totoro and Vander, maybe Unicorns can get their road to playoffs on the right track.
Each team 9 games left. Unicorns, last split, they were sitting at the bottom of the standings at this point in time. They are doing slightly better this time round, but they're still far away from where they want to be. A win here would be a big momentum swing for them. It could potentially start the same win streak from last split, but Schalke don't want to let go of their recent success.
Hanging onto it by their very fingertips, and a win today would be 4-0 for them in their last 4 games. 2 undefeated weeks in a row. First time they have done that as an organization, but Unicorns stand in their way, and you can hear that the fans are on their side today.
So it looks like no early game shenanigans are setting up right now. Schalke, I imagine, want to get a little bit of deep vision off to see where Cold is starting. If they can look to steal away some of the enemy jungle camps, that's always an extra bonus. But where they decide to start will be very dependent on where that early vision goes down. Looking across the board, it does seem like Nukeduck will be the big carry, and I think that he's someone that Schalke have often found a lot of success with when they do enable him to be one of those big playmakers.
Oh, definitely. You look at him yesterday, he went 7-2-5 on the Yasuo when he played the Kai'Sa a week ago as well. He was the dominant force on that team, ending the game with a ton of kills, a slew of them, I think you could say, but we need to see if he's able to actually accelerate through this game. Schalke going for an invade, spotted out on the ward, and getting this early red buff is fine, but Unicorns know it's happening, so they can always let Cold go towards the red buff of his own.
Yeah, and very commonly that we're seeing in the current meta, teleports being run on supports, which means that they group up as a 4-man to invade, guaranteeing them a numbers advantage, or at the very least equal numbers, so that it makes this invade that much safer. They can then just TP back to lane, because you know you're not going to use it in the early laning phase. Now, Schalke will have spotted Cold moving over to the red buff, but they've got to catch this mid wave that Exile is already pushing in on the Zoe, and Schalke looking for a collapse.
They're trying to get across here, but Totoro and Neon will stop them for the moment. Neon has that Ravenous Flock, the ability to pull someone back if they are caught out with a Bone Skewer, or even with the E never move from the Swain, so you can quite quickly be caught out of position if you get hit with one of those CC spells.
You can already see Schalke coming in with the prime calculations, knowing that the Kindred mark would be on the top side, denying that away from Cold in the early game. Obviously, just a little bit of unfortunate RNG on the side of Cold, but he will still be able to grab the bot side Scuttle Crab. You can see both junglers right now just trading sides of the map. Nothing too extravagant or extraordinary going on in this early game.
And this was kind of the case the last time these two teams met as well, was both of their first games of the split, and it was pretty even for the majority of the game, going down to about minus 2,000 gold for Schalke, but they were able to come back in the mid-game, get towards that 30-minute mark, and then able to take the win in the end.
I mean, Unicorns kind of controlled a lot of the early game. We talked about them being, or needing to be proactive in this game, and the first time these two teams met, Unicorns was nothing but proactive. They found early game leads all across the board in every single lane, but then they made one crucial mistake, which was around the bot lane. They tried to dive Vizicachi, who was a Cho'Gath with stopwatch, and they ended up failing. Schalke found a successful fight. They quickly turned that into a Baron, and then all of a sudden UOL lost the entire game. So it was very close, very on in the season. It was a game you could argue that Unicorns deserved to win, but since that time, Unicorns have only really shown inconsistency. They've kind of been their own worst enemy, where they found these early leads, and then they've been the ones throwing them away. And Schalke have been kind of the opposite. They've gradually gotten better from week on week. Their understanding of how to play towards their win conditions and generally playing safer in the laning phase and not giving away these free kills has generally been steady growth for the squad. And for the Unicorns, you're kind of looking at them to show that essence of consistency, something that apparently they've had in scrims, but have yet to replicate onto the stage.
And that's something we hear so often about the Unicorns. They're a good team in scrims, but last split we didn't see it until the second half of the split. This split we haven't really seen them challenge those top 5, top 6 teams here in EU. So want to see just a little bit more from them if we can. Across the board, so I always struggle with this because I look at Nukeduck CS, I'm like, oh, he's 20 CS ahead of Exile at the moment. But then you have to remember Nukeduck's getting all the jungle farm as well. So it's actually pretty even between Exile, Cold, and Nukeduck at the moment. Perhaps a slight gold differential over the course of all of them, but not too much at all.
I think gold and levels are the crucial things to look at. And you can see that right now, Exile the same level as Nukeduck, which means that he's in a pretty comfortable spot for the time being. You can also see that in terms of the overall state of the gold, it's pretty even between the two. And right now, Exile's only really like a kill behind Nukeduck, but the deficit in the jungle kind of makes up for that. So Unicorns, they're not too uncomfortable for the time being. And now we kind of want to see Cold look for a couple of these early ganks. They've got a couple levels under their belt. These level 6 are going to be reached soon, and it looks like he's going top lane.
Yeah, apprehend on Chachi to start it off, pots the steadfast presence down, but Cold's just going to dodge around the edge of that. Chachi flashes away, dance of arrows, Cold flashes in, and there's the first kill for Unicorn.
So Vizicachi oversteps up towards the top lane. He uses the steadfast presence to try and deny some of the jumps that were coming out from Cold, but he had the red buff, he had the damage. The initial setup came in from White Knight, and it became a very easy kill towards the top side of the map.
Cold, unfortunate though that his mark has spawned down towards the bottom side once again. So sitting on 0 stacks at the moment. It looks like Totoro is trying to protect the Scuttle Crab here, but amazing Nukeduck and the push in the bot lane will mean that Schalke get to deny the second mark for that Kindred.
Now, Nukeduck has hit level 6, and remember in the draft we talked a little bit about how with this funnel in particular, it can be a little scary with his ability to set up ganks, because typically in these funnel comps, you don't see the jungle attention very much unless you are G2 and you gank top lane all the time. But with Nukeduck on this Talia, he has the ulti to get really involved in a lot of these side lanes, and he can kind of build his own early advantage and set himself up to be one of the big carries that this team has often relied on.
And he's been so good across the last few weeks on these main carries. This Kai'Sa, the Yasuo yesterday as well, his ability to play around the team, play around team fights, and actually be able to carry Schalke across the line in a lot of cases is one of the prime reasons we highlight Nukeduck as this key player. Deficio talked about him a lot yesterday. We just want to see that little bit more from him. He's been consistently good, but he's never been on a team that's been great.
Well, it's the chicken or the egg question, right? Is it? I don't know actually if this is a good analogy or not.
Well, you finish it and I'll mock you if it's bad.
But it's the idea that, you know, Nukeduck has been put on a variety of different teams and he hasn't found any real success. So is it Nukeduck that is the problem, or is it the teams around him that he's yet to find real synergy with? So I don't know if the chicken egg thing works.
It
there,
does.
But perfect.
Which one comes first, Nukeduck being bad or his teams being bad?
There we go.
That's the question. But Nukeduck is performing well, at least at the moment. So, although we don't want to count our chickens before they're hatched.
Good one.
That was such a bad one.
Now they're going for a dive in bot lane. You can see Cold has hit level 6. Totoro are going to try and zone upset away from his escape route.
Neon 6 as well. Bone Skewer flashed away from, and Totoro will just dive his way away from that bottom lane.
I think they noted that Nukeduck was around the red buff, and with his ulti, they could have swung this very quickly into Schalke's favor. So UOL taking the safer approach and disengaging instead. They're going to be happy with the flash, but Totoro, he's looking for more.
Goes for the dive in. Phantom Undertow doesn't connect the stun. Cold's still here. Vander, though, landing those concussive blows, slowing up Totoro and Cold, and will force them away for the moment. Could be a little bit of chip damage on the tower at least, but nothing too major there for the Unicorns.
Interesting stat there. Only a 25% win rate for the Kindred in the European LCS. That actually surprises me given how popular it really is across the board. And it seems that teams have struggled to find success with her. She is really strong in these early skirmishes. She has a lot of teamfight utility thanks to ultimate, and often she's great against teamfight comps. Against this kind of funnel comp, I don't think she's as impactful because you have things like the Poppy ulti to knock her out of it. You have the Alistar ulti to knock her out of it. You have the Talia W to knock them out of it. I mean, you're kind of seeing a trend here from the Schalke lineup, which means that in the middle of these fights, when you try and drop this ulti to save one of your teammates, you might just get CC'd straight out of the pit, and you can't then utilize that fantastic ultimate. So we'll see how things play out in terms of the execution of these fights. A lot of eyes will be on Cold already in this early game and later on in the fights.
And we talked about how we wanted Cold really to accelerate the early game for the Unicorns. We wanted him to be the one making the plays. He has got that kill up towards the top side, but you feel like the next play needs to come soon. He needs to continually be able to get these skirmishes, able to get these fights, because otherwise, Nukeduck sitting at 115 CS already, he's only going to keep scaling.
Yeah, and what's interesting from Schalke is that even though Upset has lost... Oh, Exile.
Yeah, that's not what you want to do, Exile, but flashes away. Manages to get himself to safety. That was just greedy from Exile trying to stop Nukeduck's back. Yes,
he didn't respect that Amazing was hanging around. Now Cold looking for another gank up top, but look where Upset is. He is hanging around in the shadows, ready for a counter gank. But this was something I wanted to talk about in that a lot of, or Misfits specifically, this is something you see them do a lot. Once the first Drake down bot is dead, they just leave. They swap up topside because then the next neutral objective to play around is the Rift Herald. Schalke are recognizing this, and they're grouping up as a 4-man unit up top to play towards the top tower and potentially the Rift Herald afterwards.
And Nukeduck has the Weaver's Wall if he wants to join the fight. Exile already on his way up here as well. That Alistar is 6, which is important for dives, because the ultimate blocks out a lot of damage if you go for it. Schalke decide they don't want it yet. Neon still pushing in that bot lane, which is great for the Unicorns, still getting pressure on the other side of the map.
Yes, they won't be able to siege that effectively. It's the Poppy TPing down bot, very much what we expect. Totoro not going to be in too much danger. But you're right, Medic, we haven't really seen a huge amount of action from Cold so far in this early game, aside from the kill up top, and the fact that he helped burn a flash down towards the bot lane. He hasn't really been able to set up much for his team. They're still sitting at a healthy gold lead overall, largely because of the farm that he has been picking up. And Amazing being in that deficit doesn't really compensate for the, even though Nukeduck is being funneled all this extra gold. He has about an 800 lead right now over Exile, but the jungle disparity is really where the gold advantage is coming in favor of the Unicorns of Love, on top of that first blood that they did pick up for themselves. So Unicorns still fine for the time being. Levels are the big thing for me that I always keep track of, and when the enemy funnel is kind of a level or two ahead, that's when I start to get a little bit more concerned. But for the time being, both mids level 9. Nukeduck not quite at that terrifying carry state just yet.
Just pinged over to the level 10, but Exile will be on his way there soon as well, about 3/4 of a level behind. So the experience advantage is starting to snowball away from Unicorns, but nothing too magnificent yet. Looks like it might be a little bit of a fight around the Scuttle Crab. Some vision control being gained by Unicorns, but there's a ward in the bush that Exile's just walked out of, and I think Unicorns will secede any ability to fight around here for now.
Rift Herald refusing to reset. She now will return to her lair after realizing, okay, you've ruined my garden patch. Now what will you do? Schalke's eyes are set back up towards the top side of the map where 3 members of the Unicorns are, and a lot of vision being set up around the river for Schalke. So this will make any kind of dive difficult, and Upset just stalling out on the minion wave. So 12 minutes in, considering it is the Unicorns, I was expecting a little bit more bloodshed, especially with the comp that they've drafted. Schalke will be pretty content with the way in which the game is playing out. They haven't lost any major objectives in the early game, things aren't snowballing out of control, and you're still allowing Nukeduck to pick up those items, get to a point where he can now finally make a play.
Weaver's Wall used there by Nukeduck to try and catch out Exile. Not going to be able to do too much. And while the game is a little bit slower here, Vedius, and while the teams just look for this tower pressure, actually looks like Cold might be coming up towards this top lane. Vander quite low, down to about half. Neon's going to pop the ultimate underneath the tower. There's one. They're looking for the second as well. Unicorns coordinate the dive almost perfectly. Cold gets the double in the end, and Unicorns get out scot-free.
Here are the early kills that UOL were looking for. Upset's flash, I believe, only just came up, but even still, he was so low, he probably didn't even have an opportunity to use it. Vander tried, but it was too little, too late, and the Unicorns secure first tower in the game, along with extending their gold lead to 3,000.
And they'll get the Rift Herald off the back of it as well. That's so wonderful for the Unicorns of Love. The ability to now take down another tower with this Rift Herald, get a bit more chip damage, at least onto a secondary tower if they can as well. A 3,000 gold lead for them at the 13-minute mark. Cold has been instrumental to this Unicorns lineup.
Yeah, we put the responsibility on the Unicorns jungler to find these early kills, and he does so up in the top side. So, Upset's flash is in fact back up, but a good double binding from Neon into the huge amount of damage enables them to chunk out both Upset and Vander initially. There's no way they can turn this around, and because Upset chose to use the stopwatch, he didn't see the point in trying to flash away. So, it was an easy double kill and dive for the Unicorns of Love. They even had the Kindred ulti to save them in the event that something went wrong. No teleport was available on Chachi to help turn the things around, and the Unicorns, they execute upon it effectively. But the question is, can they maintain and keep hold of this early game gold lead? Because Medic, we did talk about it. Unicorns are often their own worst enemy, and even though they've often found a lot of these early leads, they can't hold on to them because they make that one poor decision. They go for that dive, they go for that fight that really they just shouldn't have.
Excel's going to land a bit of damage onto Amazing across the wall. That Upset actually comes in with the culling as well, trying to force them away. Schalke force 4 members towards this mid lane. Unicorn still a little bit spread out across the map, but because an Infernal Dragon is on the map soon, Schalke just trying to get their vision control down in this bottom side river.
Interestingly, Vizicachi, after going for an early Sheen, seems to be getting a bit of a head of White Knight in this top lane matchup rather that's being played out in the bot lane. Meanwhile, the Unicorns, while Schalke are playing for the Infernal Drake, Unicorns are just grouping up mid. They have the Rift Herald. They might even choose to go for a second tower. It depends how much of a gamble they want to take. They don't have any vision on Nukeduck right now, who says his eyes on the bot lane.
Going down towards this bottom side, doesn't have the Weaver's Wall yet, but can just surf through the lane, and that's a very dead White Knight. Not much he could do there. Unicorns deciding they just want to push mid instead. Neon's still pushing in that top wave as well, so 2 towers in the mid lane, and some damage probably from the Rift Herald here as well, on towards that inhibitor tower. It's 1,500 damage from the Unicorns, and chip on towards that top tower.
Yeah, remember the changes to the Rift Herald were that even if it gets low health, it still does a flat amount of damage, so UOL getting a lot of efficiency from that Rift Herald. He does end up securing it. Now Totoro has his eyes set on Vizicachi, the rest of the Unicorns in hot pursuit.
Yeah, if it was just Totoro, I think Chachi wouldn't be too worried, but Exile and Cold are on their way as well. Totoro down pretty low, but Chachi pops the Keeper's Verdict, only knocks away the Zoe. The chase is in, and that's Cold on a rampage. Unicorns of Love, 4,000 gold ahead, 16 minutes in here, Vedius. And I have a quick stat for you. The only time Unicorns have been in a lead at the 15-minute mark and lost this split was against Schalke in week 1, day 1. Neon caught out underneath this tower up towards the top side. That's a pretty easy kill for Amazing and Nukeduck.
Good chunk of damage, but he didn't have the stopwatch this time around. Regardless, though, Unicorns are always getting something else on the map every time Schalke find a kill. The fact that they sent Nukeduck down to the bottom lane is rather questionable, because you think about what they lost for it in exchange. 2 towers in the mid lane, 1 tower up in the top lane, and their tier 3 in the mid also lost about 1/3 of its HP. In exchange, though, they killed White Knight. Like, in terms of cost-benefit, Unicorns of Love walk away as a very happy squad. They've now got a 4,000 rather gold lead over the Schalke squad team. I keep using the word squad.
Group 5 players. Pentad.
Pentad?
Yeah, fine.
Oh.
I think Pentad is a word.
But let's have a look at how this play happens. And yeah, you know, we were just talking about the decision-making. You could have had Nukeduck head up towards the rest of his team, act as that extra bit of wave clear, but they thought that with the numbers that they had in mid, they could just hold the siege. It turns out that they couldn't, and while this was a very clean kill onto White Knight, he was pretty much chain CC'd and couldn't get out of that situation. They just don't have the wave clear. Upset is too afraid to approach the wave, and then Chachi ends up overstaying in bot lane, so he ends up giving a kill back over to the Unicorns of Love, extending Cold's rampage to an even bigger one.
4-0 now on that Kindred, and you can see Schalke trying to maybe force a fight around this river, but at the moment, anything they force seems to backfire into their faces. Still only got 1 tower for themselves this game, as opposed to Unicorns who have 5. It's a very strong early game from the Unicorns of Love, and perhaps the start of their comeback in this split.
Quite potentially, this is when it started last split. They had a pretty miracle run. It just, towards the very end of the split, they had to go up against G2, Fnatic, and Vitality, some of the top teams in the region that they couldn't quite find the wins against, and they were unfortunately short of qualifying for playoffs. But it was a very competitive split because of how our bottom teams ended up catching up to some of our mid to top tier teams. And that's what they're looking to do right now. This early game has been very clean. You already talked about it, Medic. And they just want to keep this pressure up. Baron will be the next big point of contention for them. You can already see they've set up a bit of vision towards the top side of Schalke's jungle. Right now, it's not heavily invested because they're just trying to steal away some of these camps. They're trying to apply pressure with all 3 lanes. And you should start to see them go back to base relatively soon, pick up a bunch of control wards, and then just make this Baron a very difficult objective for Schalke to approach. But for Schalke, their eyes are all on Nukeduck. 2 items now completed, both the Jungle Runic Echoes and the Realnomicon. He's level 14 to the level 12. Remember what I said earlier, when that level advantage starts to come in is when you have to really start respecting the funnel, because the base stat extra values that you get are extremely valuable. And on top of that, he's got a lot of items that will really influence his damage output.
The number we usually bandy around is about 600 gold per level that you have an advantage over your enemy. So you can add another 1,200 gold for Nukeduck over Exile at the moment. The engage comes in here from Chachi onto Totoro. He has to flash away, uses the Ghost Water Dive to keep himself safe as well, but it's a summoner burnt, and Schalke didn't really sacrifice too much for that.
Yeah, good chunk there from Chachi. Punishes the misplay from Totoro, locks in Chachi.
Once again gets the knock into the wall though. Here's the Weaver's Wall as well. White Knight trying to get onto the other side of it. He's caught out in the midst of all of Schalke. Knockup comes out from the Glacial Fissure. Neon now as well on the flank. White Knight has to have the Lamb's Respite to keep himself alive. Chachi pushing onto that Swain up towards the top side of this fight. Neon doesn't need to overstep here, has to step back, as Nukeduck is on his way. Another Bone Skewer. Nukeduck poured into the middle of it all, but the flash away from Cold, the flash in from Exile isn't enough. And Schalke and Unicorns just back away from each other in the mid lane.
Now, a lot of flashes were burned from the Unicorns of Love here because they weren't in an optimal setup to force this fight. Nukeduck was just sitting on the back line, freely getting all this extra damage off. No one on the Unicorn side could really get close to him, which meant that he could just hit each target one at a time. White Knight got extremely low, Cold was then the next follow-up target, Totoro almost got killed. It was just a kind of messy fight for Unicorns to play, which enabled Schalke to get this huge summoner spell advantage, which they can now leverage in the next few fights to come. That is 4 available flashes up against the 0 on the side of the Unicorns.
Nukeduck will claim himself the Scuttle Crab here as well. Something we didn't actually mention, and I think is important, is the ability for Schalke to have double Sightstone items here, because they can get extra vision down around the Baron if they are going to fight around it. If they get reset, if their vision gets clear, they have 4 more wards that they can place down. And it actually makes it harder for Unicorns to gain a true vision advantage in any place on the map.
It's very true, Medic. Having that extra vision is always very valuable. Also, you think about the extra utility that Schalke provide. They have the engage with the Alistar. They have mixed damage with both the Lucian and the Talia, who's now hit that level 15 mark. Chachi will act as a pretty effective frontline and can also act as a disengage tool, which is something that's very valuable against champions like Swain, because when they do get into the thick of things and they are in a 5v5 scenario, they are terrifying. That ulti can be very scary. But if you just punt him out the moment he pops the ulti, then his damage output drops heavily, and you can mitigate a lot of his influence in these fights. So in the 5v5, I kind of want to give the edge to Schalke. They have demonstrated that their ability to 5v5 has been pretty solid throughout the regular season as well. But for Unicorns, they're kind of looking for picks. They're looking for opportunities to catch members of Schalke out. And right now, Schalke aren't giving that, and in part, it's due to all the extra vision that they have across the board.
You can see that Upset was caught with the Sleepy Trouble Bubble, but the Unbreakable, the wall gets put up, and the Panel Star does no damage as Exile jumps forward.
We'd like to see a little bit more control wards on the map for the Unicorns of Love. Right now, they only have control wards in the inventory of both Cold and Totoro. Amazing, gonna force an Ignite down onto Exile, a bit of pressure. But yeah, right now we don't see any control wards on Neon or Exile, and we only really see 2 spread out around the Baron area. So I'd like to see a little bit more vision from the side of the Unicorns, especially if they're looking to use this Baron as a means to find a pick or potential poke onto Schalke.
You can see they have those couple of control wards up there in the river and then one down here in that mid lane bush, but having the ability to replenish them is so vital for a team, especially when Schalke can come in and try and clear them out. And you can see Schalke, this is the second time we've seen Nukeduck waiting in a bush, seeing if someone will face check into him. Extra vision paramount if you want to make these setups around something like a Baron.
Was not expecting only 4 kills on the side of Unicorns. Was expecting a lot more early game bloodshed, but Schalke with the funnel have played it a little bit more passively. We are in the second half of the split, of course, and all these teams want to pick up big wins, but here's Chachi.
Chachi going in. There's the Weaver's Wall from the side as well. Totoro will jump himself away with the Phantom Undertow, but Neon is the first target. He's down. Exile will be able to land a Sleepy Trouble Bubble, but hasn't really got that much more. White Knight isn't teleporting into this. Nukeduck pulled in once again, but the Unicorns just don't have the damage to catch out Nukeduck. And Schalke pick up an easy kill in the jungle. Engage there as well. All onto the backline. There's Lamb's Respite as well, but Exile's knocked straight out of it. Cold has to run for the hills, and Schalke find the perfect moment for a fight in the mid lane.
They find a good pick onto Neon, and they quickly dive the tier 1 turret. Unicorns have faltered as Schalke find a huge team fight and have their eyes set on the Baron.
Yeah, White Knight did start his TP, cancelled it right at the end. Now we'll see Schalke going for that Baron. It's all on Totoro, but if he steals this one away, it's definitely the play of the week. Usurps Visit Chachi's Elder Dragon seal yesterday. Totoro, you're going to go for it, my man. The Pike, very slippery, can get in there. Blast Cone. Doesn't land the Bone Skewer, and the smite comes out from Nukeduck. Good play from Schalke to secure the Baron at 24 minutes.
So let's have a look at how this fight starts. You can see the UOL a little spread out right now. Zoe actually hitting in the bottom half of the jungle. Not really sure why he's sitting there, but it does mean that Neon is just sitting by his Raptors, making it very easy for Schalke to get this chain CC, utilizing the combo of Visit Chachi and the Talia wall to find that initial pick. And then Exile, look at the decision-making hit from Chachi. Knocks him into the wall, gets the stun, and immediate follow-up from Schalke. And here you can see all the knockbacks that we were talking about. That Kindred ultimate will not help you when there's so much like movement CC on the side of Schalke to just pick off targets left, right, and center. So with a very quick 3 kills, Schalke now have control of the Baron. They've equalized the gold. They have a level 16 Talia that has 3 items completed on track to finish the 4th. And you start to wonder, ooh, is this really possible for UOL to come back into this game? They do still have some strong members in that Neon has been doing pretty well on the Swain. The Zoe will still do damage, and Kindred being 4-0 is someone you always have to respect, but Nukeduck is just going to be so difficult to deal with, and it's just so far ahead that you kind of have to give the huge advantage to Schalke in these upcoming fights.
You definitely do, and it feels almost like deja vu from the last time these two teams met. It was around the 20 to 25 minute mark that Schalke got back into the game. Here they've done it with a great fight into the Baron, and then we saw Schalke just take control of the game. That's exactly what they're looking to do now with this push up towards the top lane.
The key difference here is that last time it was Unicorns of Love making a poor decision and poor play on towards Schalke, whereas this time we actually saw Chachi finding those excellent picks multiple times, which then enabled Schalke to find the successful fights, which is now allowing them to siege onto these inhibitor turrets.
SR looking for the paddle star there. Did land the sleep, but it's not going to be enough. Inhibitor tower goes down. Cold on his way across as well. Perhaps looking for a 4v5 fight if they can find it. Totoro charged up the Bone Skewer, but not quite able to get in range. Sleep lands once again onto Amazing. Paddle star does not connect, and Schalke are able to get out in the top lane. Didn't take the inhibitor, but got the tower, and with it, 1,000 gold lead.
They've got pings on the mid lane. They know they need to reset. They don't have control over the other waves right now as UOL. We're pushing up towards mid. You can see that the gold difference so heavily in the favor of the Unicorns in the early game. They didn't quite press their lead hard enough. Schalke moved around the map a lot. They set up a lot of defensive vision. You know, you already talked about it, Medic, where having the double sight zone gives you that extra bit of protection. And as a result, Schalke got to a point where they were able to punish the slight missteps from the Unicorns of Love, and now they're the ones in control of the game. About 1,500 gold lead in their favor. Man and Drake going to be spawning relatively soon. Items being picked up all across the board. Schalke in prime control of this game.
And it's the two key guys that we highlighted at the start of the game. Visit Chachi and Nukeduck once again stepping up as a duo. Chachi with his ability to knock people into the walls, getting the steadfast presence down in the perfect moment as well. And then Nukeduck with the follow-up, with the seismic shove out of the Kindred ultimate to catch people out. They have been absolutely on point as a duo. And on the desk they said, is this Chachi, is this MVP Chachi coming back? Well, against his former team, it seems to be.
Yeah, he's certainly having a great game so far. You already mentioned in draft that he has a 100% win rate out of 2 games on the Poppy, is looking to make it a 3rd. And you have to wonder if this is just one of those champions that you have to take away from Vizicachi, especially when you think back to champions like the Shen that used to have so much success on in the past.
I have to remember there was a Trundle ban from the Unicorns of Love instead of the Taliyah ban as well at the first ban phase. Taliyah instantly locked in by Schalke, so they did decide to allow NukeDuck to have this champion, and the funnel has worked out for them. Took them a little bit of time, but after they found that one powerful team fight, they were able to accelerate this gold advantage. 4,500 gold off the ban is a pretty sizable sum.
Yeah, that's pretty healthy.
I'd say that, especially since Schalke yesterday with Baron didn't always have the best of affairs, we will say, against H2K, but now they get their second dragon of the game. It's a mountain, and will be secured by NukeDuck. So Schalke in a very strong position. Unicorns need to find a way to fight back.
Very slow, very controlled game. Very patient from both sides. Definitely not the most exciting way to kick off our day, but we also have to respect that, again, both these teams really value this win. Schalke have kind of had a history of disappointment. They've been relegated. They failed to qualify for playoffs multiple times. Rosters that have kind of been filled with expectation, and you kind of look at them and you think this will be the one that succeeds, has not really been able to do it. And I think it's really important for them to find that difference this split, the one that could potentially lead them to Worlds. And it will be a tough road for them. There are still a lot of top teams that control the league right now that stand in their way. And, you know, you can get into that conversation about championship points and your ability to play through the gauntlet, even if you make it to the final. Like, it's a very difficult road for Schalke. And so having these kind of wins against the bottom teams will be very valuable in making a way up towards the top end.
Oh, we saw it with Misfits last split. They didn't make it to playoffs because they could beat top teams, but they couldn't beat bottom teams. You have to take these wins against the lower seeds, and Unicorns are trying to show why they don't deserve to be a lower seed right now, with a bit of an engage in the mid lane, but only pop the Banshees on NukeDuck. Cold jumps in onto Amazing here. Still just hasn't felt as proactive as perhaps it could be. Totoro has consistently looked for these flanks, but his pike play hasn't been to the highest standard this game. Chachi maybe a little bit caught out here. The flash undertow doesn't land the stun. Bone Skewer will pull Chachi back, but Amazing gets the double flank. Teleport coming in here from Schalke as well. The Weaver's wall blocks them off. Now 3 members of the Unicorns caught in the midst of Schalke, and that's 1 down. Amazing's dead as well. His Exile from the flank can't get the damage down he wants. 1 for 1 as Schalke and Unicorns butt heads in the bottom lane. Exile trying to weave through some more damage, but cannot connect.
Of all the targets to look for a pick on, the UOL went for Vizicachi. This guy sidestepped everything and then knocked Kindred completely out of the fight. Combine that with the Taliyah wall, preventing Cold from getting involved once again, means that there was no defensive ulti to keep White Knight alive. And on Darius, you just don't have the tools to escape once you have committed. Schalke do a great job of punishing this pick, and they end up walking away the victor. So here you can see White Knight just keeping Vizicachi busy. Amazing already on his way down. The decision making here isn't a bad one from UOL. They see 2 members up top, but both those members have teleport. They can quickly join the fray. Upset provides plenty of damage to help secure the kill onto White Knight. And while they can't find anything else, they stop UOL finding this slight kill lead. And it's just, this is the kind of the problem for them. They don't have any real engage on their team. They have a lot of pick potential, but it's really difficult to find picks onto this Schalke lineup. You have so much frontline, you have a lot of mobility with both the Taliyah and the Lucian, and they also have great vision control, so they can see a lot of the plays that UOL are trying to make before they're even able to execute upon them, which means that Schalke have just got this perfect barrier bubble that really limits the options that UOL have. And now they're kind of stuck in this situation where a Baron steal is kind of the best case scenario for them.
Totoro uses the blast cone to get away there from Amazing. White Knight is down towards the bottom lane, has the teleport, but Schalke can just set up for the Baron here. They've already got that blast cone down. There were a couple of wards in the pit, cleaned out by the control ward. Chachi's going to come down here to answer White Knight. And Darius, I've always thought of him as an early game champion, early to mid game. Doesn't really have the late game prowess against a tank. So you would expect Chachi just to win out these fights if they do occur. And that's exactly what he's doing. The double hammer shock alongside that Iceborne Gauntlet is enough, but as soon as you build up those hemorrhage stacks, Chachi decides he wants to back away.
So that cooldown reduction is pretty immense. He had his Q up like every 2 seconds. Yeah, it's literally every 2 seconds, which means that he can just stick onto these targets, especially someone like a Darius who won't really be able to escape. We talked about how once he picked up the Sheen, he started trading pretty effectively against White Knight, and he seems to be holding on to that pattern. You are quite right, Darius is really going to struggle, largely because of his mobility in these late game fights. And again, UOL don't really have the setup to fight the 5v5. They needed to find those early picks. They needed to pretty much snowball champions like the Kindred, which they started to do, but then one bad fight in the middle lane has given Schalke full control. And Nukeduck is now full build. 32.5 minutes into the game, he has about 17,000 gold, and he's got his eyes on Neon.
Yeah, Weaver's walked straight behind Neon, and that is a very dead Swain. Didn't even use the stopwatch, knew that he wasn't going to be able to do anything about that.
Now they have their eyes on the inhibitor. Baron is alive as well, Infernal comes up in about a minute. Schalke have so many options available to them, and the Unicorns are just kind of pushed up back against the wall right
Pretty sure they've given up this inhibitor because White Knight is still pushing down towards that bottom lane. Schalke might even look for a 5v3 if they can find it, because Chachi and Amazing are very tanky here. Going for the Nexus Towers first. Upset jumps forward. Totoro dodges out the culling with the Phantom Undertow. They're going to lose an inhibitor tower down towards that bottom lane. Teleport coming in from White Knight to try and save his team, and Schalke will immediately retreat as White Knight joins the fight. Exile down to about half HP. Schalke just running up here. They should be able to get away from this one pretty safely. An inhibitor and a Nexus Tower in their back pockets.
Now, they should set up some vision around the top side of UOL's jungle, clear this out and either look for a pick or just rush the Baron down. They should be able to take it relatively quickly with both the Talia and the Lucian, but they actually have their eyes set on a couple more kills. Fortunately for the Unicorns of Love, they read the play and they're able to get out with their lives.
But one of the benefits of having those double sight stone items is the ability to reward as you get out of a fight like that. You've pushed the wards in, your support's run out of wards. Amazing still has 3 in his inventory, so can just reset up any vision that you may have lost. The fight in the mid lane is on the cards. You can sense it about to erupt. Unicorns know they need to do something. They need to find that pick. They need to find that single catch onto Nukeduck, onto Upset, just to stop Schalke in their tracks. But at the moment, it's all in Schalke's favor.
So the Baron will be started off. UOL don't know that this is happening just yet. Amazing waiting off on the flank.
SL lands the trouble bubble, only onto the Braum though. Baron down to about 6,000 HP. It's a lot of damage on Vander. Now Chachi, Cold steps forward. He has the Blood Razor, remember, so he's going to do a huge amount. The death from below catches out Vander. Amazing has the flank, but Nukeduck's gone for the base. He's going for the win here. No teleport on White Knight, and it might just be the year of Nukeduck once again. He's going to take down the first Nexus Tower. The teleport comes in, and the Unicorns can do nothing about it. Schalke with the backdoor, and they will be able to take the win in the end here. You have to feel Nukeduck gets caught out by Neon, but the final order will come out, and Schalke take the victory over the Unicorns.
2-0 now for Schalke over the Unicorns throughout the summer split. They move themselves further up into the standings with a 6-4 record. They didn't even want the Baron. Their eyes were set on getting that back door. They didn't play towards the other inhibitors. Nukeduck with his quick thinking. 5-0-1 he ended that game. Chachi and Upset valiantly gave away their lives in order to allow Schalke to secure themselves the win.
Yeah, and sometimes you have to make calls like that if you're going to win against teams that maybe a team fight around Baron would have cost Schalke too much. Unicorns, of course, will be a little bit dismayed that that's how they lose the game in the end, because they played relatively well. Their early game was strong. They were back within 2,000 gold.
But then they never transitioned it, you know? They never turned that into anything significant. And when your Kindred is 4-0 and you have that much control of the early game, you should have the freedom to force a lot more. And while we did see Cold moving around, trying to make a couple things happen, we did see that great dive up top. The game just kind of slowed down once they had 5 towers, remember? And then, like, I feel they just should have put more pressure on the Baron. They should have used it as a means to either force a fight or try and sneak it or rush it down or just largely play around this objective more. Instead, they didn't. They just kind of kept the farming game going for a little bit longer, and then a couple people missed position, one player oversteps, Chachi very quick to pull the trigger, and he was the one that found a lot of those picks. He was very instrumental in denying a lot of these team fights the Unicorns tried to start. So big props to Chachi, and then also Nukeduck for evidently ending the game.
Yeah, good stuff all around from Schalke. They'll be very happy to go 6-4. 4 wins in a row for them as well. Coming into next week, coming into the second half of the split, that's a very strong position to be in. Keeps them in that playoff berth as well. And you have to wonder for Unicorns if that is the end of their playoff run. you can obviously come back from a 3-7 position. We've seen it happen before, but the more that you lose these games, the more you lose games against teams like Schalke, Roccat, Giants, that's where you need to start being worried, because you're not going to beat Fnatic or G2 or Misfits if they play well.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a challenge for the Unicorns moving forward. And while a win here could have been a big confidence booster for them, it's instead going to do the opposite for Schalke. And they're going to be feeling very happy sitting at 6-4 right now.
Now they are. As always, you guys can decide your player of the game at LoL Esports on Twitter. We've selected NukeDuck, Vizicachi, and Amazing as your choices. Who would you give it to, Vedias?
I mean, probably Vizicachi for me.
Yeah?
I feel like he was pivotal in finding a lot of those fights. I feel like so far he's played very well this week, and it's nice to see a bit of a return to form. He seems to perform extremely well on certain champions, and right now Poppy definitely seems to be the champion for him.
Well, let's check in with Pyro, who's standing by, not with Vizicachi, but with Amazing.
Thank you very much. Yes, indeed, there are many stars on the Schalke lineup. I'm talking to one of them. So Amazing, you guys had a little bit of a rough start. Unicorns knocking down your towers. Tell me a little bit about how you pulled it back in the end.
I mean, we always know with the funnel strat that we kind of have this mid-game to late-game scaling, because we'll at some point like just out-funnel by 100 in the mid lane. But it was a bit scary when in the early game they got an early kill on top lane and they get a couple of turrets. So we're kind of scared. But when they actually like abandoned side lanes a lot, like especially the Darius at some point like fell behind too, we knew we could win that way.
And when you did. Now, let me ask you a little bit more about this funnel strategy, because we've seen it from several teams, yourself included, but now you're kind of pioneering the Taliyah one we've seen in a few other regions. Tell me a little bit more about specifically funneling on that champion.
Taliyah, in comparison to maybe Kai'Sa, basically offers you this specific like ultimate basically in the mid game where you can basically cut off people on the side lanes, but it also has like a lot more wave clear. So the 2v2s and the 2v2 potential is a lot higher, because in the early game you can actually one-shot someone if you see him. That's why Alistair is such a good combo with it. And we saw yesterday, I think G2 played it too, and it's just an easy way to basically get a W on the board, you know?
Well, and you've got 6 of them stacked up now. A little bit more about the funneling strategy and your part in it. Of course, you played the Alistar today. Has it been difficult for you to adjust to a more supportive style, or do you kind of like it?
You know, I actually like it. You know, I know why Junkos plays it every game he can, because I don't have to do anything, and my mid laner carries me, you know? I'm really happy.
Easy peasy. So is this actually make it a little easier for you to kind of shot call, lead the team around?
I mean, yeah, it is. Actually, it opens up my mind a bit, because like I don't have to worry about messing up my Sejani ultimates. I can rather mess up my Alistair W Qs, and no one will mind, because I'm first timing it. But no, I'm actually really happy playing it, because like it makes me, like, it plays into my strengths, which is just like obviously shot calling and like finding the right play at the right moment.
Oh, I'm glad you found the rhythm. Congrats with the win. Amazing. We're going to go ahead and send it back to the desk for some more post-game analysis.
Thank you very much. Pyre might free up some more mental capacity to do the Volibear dance too, Maurice. We'll find out. But
he's winning now, so there's no excuse.
There's literally nothing left. We're holding on to that one. Deficio's here, so we had to get it in. But bring up picks and bans here. Talk a little bit about what both these teams were trying to do. This was neither of these teams' favorite games. I don't think either of these teams walked away like, this was a great performance, this was solid through. Schalke pulls through with the win in the end, but it does feel like Unicorns of Love are starting to figure out what they need to do in the draft phase to set themselves up for success.
Well, so it was interesting because I really liked the first half of the draft for the Unicorns. Right, they have the Zoe in the mid lane for Exile, the Kindred as well, which Cold is really comfortable on. But I just don't understand the second half, because you already see there's an Alistar and a Braum on the other side, and now we're going to draft 2 champions, Darius and Swain, that want to stay in the fight for as long as possible, but now they're just going to get knocked out, CC'd, throw a Poppy in there for Schalke, and they just never get a good fight.
It felt like the entire idea around the draft was make sure there's a blind pick for Chachi and then try and counterpick with White Knight. That said, it's never been a successful strategy for them. White Knight has actually been more impactful when he's just on a tank himself. So they tried with the Darius pick. They got the first kill for him as well. It was like, okay, this does make sense what they're trying to do. But after that first kill, they never got to play around the Darius lane again. And they never actually gained any advantage then from having that last pick. And it was all about just Cold getting ahead on the Kindred, which was fine. They got a massive turret lead as well. But that's where you think you gotta have the map control. You gotta be able to play around your Darius if you're last picking it for White Knight.
And this is a champion we've heard Cold talk about a lot, and teams talk about Cold, his Kindred, how good he can be on it. We finally see that performance come out from him, but then it's the team as a whole, even when they have some of these picks that they're more comfortable on, dropping the ball here. And you talk so much about the composition, and we saw great lead. Fantastic start from the Unicorns of Love. Incredibly dominant. But with the second we hit that mid game, man, every time it feels like this team is in control. We're like they're playing out of their minds. They're so good. It falls apart.
I think they run out of ideas. Like in the early game, it's a lot easier to practice that and kind of, schedule out in your mind, okay, so this is what we do, this is the next step when we run this kind of draft. Okay, we get the first turret, how do we get the second one? Once you get to the mid game, you actually have to be really good at reacting to the current state of the game. And I think what hurt them here was with the Darius pick that they had in the side lane, because they're against Taliyah funnel, it's really hard for Darius to push because Taliyah can just go down and kill him like we saw Nukeduck do a few times. So they instead made the call to say, we need to group mid. But grouping mid was the way for Schalke to actually play the game.
Right, and I think for Unicorns, what they really needed to do was get inside the enemy jungle, because once you take down these 5 turrets by 16 minutes, it's so easy to invade, steal away camps. You have a Zoe, you have the Pyke as well. You can definitely look for ways to shut it down.
We've seen this from Exile, where when his team does have a lead, when he's able to play in, when they have deep vision, that this guy can just pick people off left and right on Zoe, but it just did not happen for Unicorns. I love this game. And because of that, we saw Schalke turning it around. When they found an opportunity, they did not hesitate to capitalize on it. We can check it out one more time, because these defining moments in the game, Schalke just makes things happen.
And this is the entire idea around the composition, is when you are grouped as 5, you can use so many different tools to set up and engage, either with the Alistar, with the Poppy Charge into a Taliyah wall from Nukeduck, and then you get the same kind of play happening here, where it's Vizicachi starting the fight when he sees the Zoe, and instantly the entire team, because they're grouped as 5 against only 3 players, call for a very easy tower dive. And I think Schalke just showed that they actually fully understood how to play their comp in the mid game. Once we got past one of the worst, dragon calls that lost them like 3 turrets part,
once we got past
good.
that part, and you heard Amazing say they're playing the funnel, they have the options in the middle late game. He
got
said
a little bit scared,
they were scared, but once they took control, they knew it was their game.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you get that Baron as the funnel composition, you can pretty much just run on through the game, because you're just going to be so strong in that 5 versus 5 with all the money in the world on towards Nukeduck, and the rest of the team comp built the team fight.
And with all that money on Nukeduck, who better to end the game? We can take a look at the ending one more time. Bit of an
Give
odd
the
one
duck,
here.
baby!
Yeah, okay, all right, Deficio. I knew it had to come out at least once.
So the call's been made, most likely by Nukeduck himself, to say, you know what, guys, I can just go kill that last Nexus turret. It's going to go down so quickly, keep them busy. And I like the call here from them. This is, again, a little bit what we talk about with, I think, Unicorn struggling, kind of adapting to the current state of the game. Nukeduck clearly not. In this case, calling very quickly, we can actually go for this play and secure it. And it fits the current narrative of Schalke that it is Nukeduck who is finishing it, because now they've won 4 games in a row. Last week, we had this discussion around Schalke having an easy schedule, because they were playing H2K, Giants, Splice, and Unicorns of Love, 4 of the bottom 5 teams. And we predicted this could probably be the big turnaround. This could be the 4-0 for Schalke, where they actually cement themselves as a top 6 team, and they just did. Don't care about how pretty it was. Getting playoffs is all that matters for Schalke, and they got 4 wins in a row.
And look, even if you can't take down the top teams, all that matters, if you can beat everyone below you, you've earned that spot in playoffs.
And that is a lot of teams below them.
There's a lot of teams.
Keep eating.
They keep winning. They keep moving up the standings. Of course, things might change when they get back on a harder schedule. That's for certain. But things do look better for Schalke right now. And at the end of the day, they get the win. That's what matters. Vizicachi, we heard a lot from the caster desk about this guy stepping up. And I wanted to get your thoughts. How are you feeling about him? Nukeduck still seems to be the center of attention, but I started to ask, are we making the case for the return of Vizicachi? Is it starting to happen?
So in that game, I'm not fully on board with the Vizicachi hype train. Like, early game got picked out by Cold, got bullied around, overstayed later on in the side lane as well. So for me, it wasn't a perfect performance out of him. That being said, once Schalke started grouping up, that's where it looked a lot better.
I think the Poppy pick has been huge for him. He's a lot more impactful on this champion. He clearly is very comfortable on playing it. This strategy of banning Cho'Gath, the champion he's actually sucked on, to then pick the Darius against the Poppy, kind of again broke down when they didn't know what to do against the Taliyah with the split push on Darius. So he got Poppy again. I think teams will probably in the second phase start removing it, just because there's such a huge difference in what he's done in games on that champion compared to the rest.
Is the case, but the fans have voted Vizicachi, Nukeduck, amazing. It is going to be Nukeduck winning out in the end. I think not surprising when we talk about that final play, that final moment. Those are the moments that stick in people's heads. It's the same reason Vizicachi was the hero
buying into the hype, baby.
Or he's just the guy that got funneled, and everyone's like, oh, look at that guy. He got a lot of CS. He did a lot of damage. Let's vote for him.
He did play well in fights, you know, always at the front, actually dancing around, got a few good knockbacks or forced some flashes. So I think well-deserved that Nuke gets it.
Yeah, absolutely. A solid player, continuing, as you said, the narrative, and I'm curious to see if the rest of Schalke can step up, if they can maybe prove that they're more than top 6, maybe try to fight into that top 4. Gonna have to take down some top teams.
Sitting there right now.
Yeah.
Hey, gonna have to continue to beat top teams to get there. We'll see if the records stay the same as the top teams fight the bottom teams. A lot is gonna get shaken up in this second round robin. However, we're gonna be right back for our next game with Selfie and H2K trying to get their first win against Betsy and Giants. Later tonight, it's time for our match of the week between Fnatic and Misfits Gaming, so be sure to stay tuned.
Upper hand on Chachi to start it off, pops the steadfast presence down, but Cole's just going to dodge around the edge of that. Chachi flashes away, dance of arrows, Cole flashes in. Vander quite low, down to about half. Neon's going to pop the ultimate underneath the tower. There's one. They're looking for the second as well. Unicorns coordinate the dive almost perfectly. Cold gets the double in the end there as well. All onto the backline. There's Lamb's respite as well, but Exil's knocked straight out of it. Cold has to run for the hills, and Schalke find the perfect moment for a fight. Schalke with the backdoor, and they will be able to take the win in the end here. You have to feel Nuke gets caught out by Neon, but the final order will come out, and Schalke take the victory over the Unicorns.